So a lot of the stuff is going to seem a little repetitive. We've talked about it in previous chapters. Up here, we have a variety of different rates that we can go with. So as we move towards the end of this textbook, we're kind of moving into the next textbook, which is next semester is the revenue management class. It's the Hospitality Financial Management, HAMG 2332. I believe that class, I can't remember, it's either going to be on Tuesday or it's Thursday, the same time block, 10:45 to 1:30, but it's either Tuesday or Thursday. Is it Tuesday? HAMG 2332. Okay. It's Tuesdays? Okay. So it'll be Tuesdays, same time block, but on Tuesday instead of Thursdays. Okay. Yes, it's only offered in the spring. Yeah. So you take this class in the fall, take that class in the spring. If you are hotel management, anybody in hotel management? Okay, so in hotel management, there's a class on Thursday called Convention and Group Sales. That is also a spring only class. Okay, so if you are in hotel management, then you'd come see me on Tuesday and Thursday, the same time block, 10:45 to 1:30. Okay, for two different classes. If you're hospitality management, then all you need to do is the Tuesday class. If you want to join us on Thursday, you're more than welcome to. It's event planning. One of our big projects that we do is we plan a high school appetizer and dessert competition. So you can see the signs over there. Those are the sponsor signs and the high school signs we did from last year. So through that, we teach all the steps of event planning, getting sponsors, setting up an event, all that kind of stuff. So that's a big project for that class. So that's the spring semester for y'all. So different rates. And I talk about revenue management because revenue management is selling the right room to the right guest on the right day for the right price. And so revenue managers will actually look at these different rates and they'll say, okay, you know what? Our rack rate is the rate that we want to achieve. That's the highest rate that we want to achieve for that particular day. Almost everything else on here is a discount off of that rack rate. Okay. And so ideally for the revenue managers, if we have a rack rate, and let's say our promotional rate, or let's say there's a corporate rate that we want to close out so that way people don't purchase their rooms on that rate, the revenue manager is the one who works with the executive leadership of the hotel, but the revenue manager is the one who makes those recommendations. Okay, we're going to close this rate. So that way nobody else can make that. Now, when you are at a small select service property, that's going to be more of the salesperson. So when I was at the La Quinta Hotel downtown, the one semester I worked there, I started getting all these calls for the last weekend of April. And I was getting calls for the HEB rate. So back then we had an HEB corporate rate of $86. So it didn't matter if they were the head of HEB or they were the person restocking the groceries in the middle of the night. Everyone, if they brought me their HEB name badge and their most recent paycheck, I would give them the $86 rate. I would honor that rate. Okay. So at the front desk agent, I started getting all these calls for $86 HEB rate. I'm like, that's weird. Like every 5 minutes, I got another call. And so I looked and our rate was $299 for that night. Well, it happened to be the second weekend of Fiesta. And so my salesperson forgot to close that corporate rate. And so all these people were calling their friends, hey, call the La Quinta because they're having the rate for $86. And so finally I called my salesperson and I was like, hey, at that time, I didn't really know much about Fiesta. I really wasn't like big on Fiesta. And excuse me for 1 second. I just heard the low battery. Okay, good. Let me make sure I still had battery on my headphone. I didn't know much about Fiesta. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I forgot to close the rate. And so when the next person called me and they're like, I want the HEB rate. Unfortunately, that's no longer available. But my friends just called and they got it. Yes, your friends were very lucky. They called just in time. But based on our occupancy, as we get more full, we close different rates, different discounted rates out. So unfortunately, it's no longer available. They're like, well, that's not fair. I was like, well, I'm thinking in my head again, this is what I say inside my head. I'm like, it's $299. You're probably going to cram 10 people in that room. So charge them each $30 and you got your room covered. Right. I know during Fiesta, people try to cram as many people as possible into a hotel room. Okay. It just happens. And so, but those with revenue management, we want to make sure that as we're looking into the future, we know what special events are happening in our city. A really good friend of mine, she used to own the Comfort Suites downtown. I'm not sure if I told you all this story or not, but she owned the Comfort Suites downtown. So in 2018, we had the men's Final Four. And she put 20 rooms in a room block, which means that it wasn't accessible to anybody else making reservations, right? It puts those rooms out of her inventory. And then 2 weeks before the Final Four came into San Antonio, she put those 20 rooms back into her inventory, charged a 4-night minimum, which means they had to stay all 4 nights, and $500 a night. And she sold out in about a day with those 20 rooms. Supply and demand, right? Someone paid $2,000 to stay at a Comfort Suites hotel during the Final Four. And so that's how you plan and you evaluate your operations that you've got going on. Okay. So different ways. This is different ways that we can actually price our guest rooms. We're going to go through each one of these. The market condition. This is one that you're going to see regularly referred to as our comp set, competitive set. So comp set is shortened competitive set. Our comp set is our immediate competitors. Who are their competitors around us? Okay. Comp set is typically based on the level of service. You're basically going after the same type of guests. Okay. It does not necessarily mean it's the hotels that are right around you. Because if you think about a map of San Antonio, right? We have the JW Marriott, JW Marriott that's up in the Stone Oak area. If we come around 1604, we get to the Hyatt Hill Country Resort that's out by SeaWorld. And then in between the two of them, we have the La Cantera Resort. They are nowhere near each other, right? Six Flags, SeaWorld, Stone Oak area, but they're all resorts. And so they're all going after the same clientele. So they would all be in the same comp set. So comp set doesn't necessarily mean it's next to each other, but it could be. You also have people like Hotel Emma, Hotel Valencia, the Intercontinental just opened, maybe the Macara Hotel. So all of these hotels are more of the higher end. So they're going to be in their own comp set. Okay. The rule of thumb approach says, make sure I have yellow. Okay. For every $1,000 of construction, okay, you're going to charge $1 for that room. For every $1,000 in construction costs. Okay. So most hotels, when we value hotels, most of them, especially when they're being built, we look at an evaluation method called per key. So a hotel may be $200,000 per key, which basically means every room costs $200,000. That includes the construction, that includes the furniture, that includes the amenities, that includes the fixtures, that includes all the electrical, right? So per key is often how they are going to evaluate the value of a hotel. And so for every $1,000 in constructions and furnishings, we'd have $1 in our rate, okay? So if we had a $70,000 per key what would we charge for our room? $70. See that? So $70,000. For every $1,000, we charge $1. That's the rule of thumb approach. Okay. So think about these rooms, these hotels that are charging $350, $400, $700 a night for their room. That tells you the luxury of the amenities and the fixtures and the construction of those rooms. Okay. Then the last one is the Hubert formula, and it is often called the bottom up. Okay. The Hubert formula is also often called the bottom up approach. How many of you have ever heard the phrase of like managers or owners are only looking at the bottom line? Have you ever heard that phrase before? What does that mean? They're only looking at the bottom line. Have you ever wondered what that means? It deals with the profitability. Yeah. So the bottom up, when we look at a P&L, a profit and loss statement, so P&L, profit and loss. When we look at a profit and loss statement, we have the income up on the top. Am I too close? So the income's at the top. Our revenue is at the very top of our profit and loss statement. Okay. And then we have all of our expenses. And they're typically listed by categories, so we can see what percentage of our expenses are different categories, like housekeeping, sales, maintenance, right? So we can keep track of all of those costs and those expenses. And then the bottom line is the profit or loss. So if it's a negative number, it's a loss. The bottom line is profit or loss. So the bottom line of our P&L. So what we look at for the Hubert formula first is what profit do we want to make? And then we build in all of the expenses that we know we're going to have. And then that tells me what income I have to have. And then that tells me how much I need to sell my rooms for. Okay. Now, luckily, a lot of this is done digitally with computers, right? But these are just 3 different ways that hotels are going to value their hotel, the value how they should sell their hotel rooms. All right. This one, have we talked about this formula? Have we seen this in this class? The semesters all run together for me. And so we do a lot of this in revenue management. But with this, when we're forecasting how many rooms we might have, okay, what does the word forecasting mean? Yeah, we look back to plan the future, right? So when we forecast something, we're using past data to make future predictions, okay? Forecasting is not actualizing. We then have to figure out, did we actualize what we forecasted? Okay, what's the difference between what actually happened and what we forecasted? And so when we think about these different areas, we want to think about what does this do to our revenue? Sorry, not our revenue, our inventory. So if I have an arrival, does that take rooms out of, or does it add rooms into my inventory? It takes rooms out, right? So if someone's arriving at my hotel, I'm going to subtract that. We'll do an example together here in just a second. Walk in, if someone walks in, does that take out of, or does it add into my inventory? It takes out of, so I'm going to subtract. Stayovers, it takes out. If somebody doesn't show up, they have a no-show, what does that do? Puts that room back into our inventory, right? We can sell it. Understays is somebody who checks out before their expected checkout date. So what does that do? It adds. Our checkouts, people who are leaving the hotel, we're going to add them back in. And then out of order rooms, we subtract, okay? So let's say we have 500 rooms in our hotel, okay? Give me some numbers. Brianne, give me a number between 0 and, no, let's do 25 and 150. 89? Okay. So we have 89 expected arrivals. Okay. Michael, give me how many walk-ins we're expecting between 15 and 150. 20 walk-ins. Okay. Stayovers, Antonia. 101. Okay. No shows. I can do it. I can do it. Russell. 4. 4 no shows. Okay. Who do we have? Alondra. How many understays? 32. Okay. Chris, how many checkouts? 40 checkouts. And Leah, how many out of order rooms? Between 1 and 10.
3.
3. Okay. Yeah, we should not have a lot of out of order rooms. Unless, of course, we had some catastrophic event like flooding or things like that. Okay. So now we figure out how many rooms we have available to sell. So we just go down the list. Y'all follow along with me so I can make sure I have my numbers correct. 500 minus 89 minus 20 minus 101. We're going to add those 4 back in, add those 32 back in, add the 40 back in, and subtract those 3. So of my 500 rooms, I have 363 rooms available. So that's how I can forecast and plan how many rooms I have available left to sell. Okay. Now, things like no shows, understays, walk-ins, these are typically, we can kind of track the percentage of how many people are no shows or how many people walked in during this particular time period. Okay. So again, using that past data to make those future choices. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about the different, what we call key performance indicators, KPIs. Okay. So they are key performance indicators. Okay. The first one is our occupancy percentage. Okay. First one is occupancy percentage. So our occupancy percentage is basically the number of rooms that are occupied divided by the number of rooms that we have available. Okay. So how many rooms did we have available in that last example? Like for the whole, so for the whole hotel, how many rooms are available in the whole hotel? 500, right? That's the number of rooms we have in the hotel. 500 rooms. Okay. Now, how many rooms do we have available to sell? What was it? 363? Okay. So we still had 363 to sell, which means they are not occupied, right? They're still available to sell. So how many rooms are occupied? Yep, 137. So we take that 137. Do y'all see where I get that 137 from? So we do 137 divided by 500, and that's going to give me a decimal of 274. Okay. Now, because this is a percentage, I'm going to multiply by 100, which basically moves this decimal place over 2 spots. So 27.4% occupied. So our occupancy percentage is how many rooms are actually occupied. Then we can use reservations, people who are in the rooms, and then divide that by the number of rooms that are in the hotel. Okay. Now, is 27.4%, is that a concerning number? It depends. If this is tomorrow, that's very concerning. Okay. If it's 6 months from now, maybe it's not so concerning. Right. And so I will tell you that a lot of people in San Antonio book the day of. Okay. In the day with it's for the day within the day. And so that's a lot of times how people book is for the day within the last 24 hours. They're like, you know what? Okay, I am gonna go see Shakira at the Alamo Dome. Let me go ahead and get a hotel just in case. I get a little too crazy at the concert. Okay. I don't know if she's coming to the Alamo Dome, but it's the first. I don't know why that's the first person. Maybe because we had Mexican just a few minutes ago. That's the first person who popped in my head. But what's that? She'll be at Frost Bank. Oh, really? Good to know. So occupancy is the first one. The next one is average daily rate, or what we call ADR for short, average daily rate. Our average daily rate is how much room revenue we sold divided by the number of rooms we actually sold that night. Okay. We don't sell every room for the exact same price. Suites sometimes have a higher price, right? As people book and our occupancy goes up, we raise the rate of our hotel rooms, right? So somebody could even have the same type of hotel room, but if they booked a while back and they got a cheaper rate, our occupancy starts filling up, which means our supply is decreasing and our demand is increasing. We're going to raise our rates. My best friend graduated from Harvard in 2015, and Harvard has one graduation. So in the spring, they have 16,000 graduates, and that kind of come to Cambridge, where Harvard is in the Boston area. And my best friend, she's from Scotland. So she and her mom flew over from Scotland. I met them up there. They had a travel agent, which is no longer their travel agent because they messed up so royally on this situation. But they forgot to make two room reservations, one for Claudia, her mom, and myself, and one from a family friend that was traveling from DC. So he went down to the front desk. They didn't have a reservation for him. There was one room left in the Holiday Inn. Do you want to guess how much they were charging for that one room? $750. It was the last room in the Holiday Inn. There's 16,000 people in the city, right? They can charge it. So he opted not to pay it, and the four of us slept in the one king bed, right? Claudia and her mom in the bed. I was supposed to sleep on the couch. He's an older gentleman, so I gave him the couch, and I slept on the couch cushions on the floor, right? So the four of us crammed into one room, right? But that's our average daily rate, right? Every room is not taken into consideration of the same price. Everyone pays different prices. And so what we want to do is take the total room revenue that was brought in that day and divide by the number of rooms that are sold. Okay. Questions about that? You want to do an example? Yeah, basically how you find the average of anything, right? You add them all up and then divide by the number that we have. So you add up what each room we paid for, or the guest paid for, add up all that revenue, and then divide by the number of rooms that we sold. Now the other one is our RevPAR. And this is, how are we doing on time? Woo, 10 minutes. Revenue per available room. RevPAR, revenue per available room. Okay. Revenue per available room takes that same total revenue, so that same number as the ADR, but this time, instead of just looking at the rooms that were sold, RevPAR looks at all of the rooms in the hotel. Okay. So we take that same number and we divide by all the rooms that are available in the hotel. So which number do you think is larger, ADR or RevPAR? ADR is always higher than our RevPAR. RevPAR is always lower than our ADR. Let's do just a quick example. Okay. Let's say we made $100,000 and we sold 300 rooms. Okay. What is our ADR? 1,000 divided by 3 is 333.33, right? So my ADR is $300.33. $333, sorry, 33 cents. But now, if we take that same $100,000 and we divide by the 500 rooms we have available, cross those two zeros out, what is 1,000 divided by 5? 200. Our RevPAR is only $200. Okay. Revenue per available room allows us to compare ourselves because every hotel doesn't have 500 rooms. Somebody in our comp set might have 300 rooms, right? And so they're not going to be able, like, depending on what their revenue availability is, they can only have 300 rooms to sell. But if I have 500, I have 200 more rooms I have to sell. And so by looking at RevPAR, it puts those hotels on an even playing field, right? My ADR could be super high. Well, that's because I've got 500, I have 200 more rooms to sell. But if we look at it based on the per available room, that is what's going to give us a more equal comparison. Okay. So that is just a small snippet. We're going to go into a lot more details in revenue management class on Tuesdays in the spring. We talk about different tactics, different things that we can do to make sure that we're maximizing our revenue to sell it to the right room, the right guest, the right room to the right guest on the right day for the right price. Okay. Any questions? I know it's a lot of math. It's very short. But like I said, this is more of just a introduction to that. Let me see what right room, right customer, right day, right price. This is revenue management. We kind of talked about this. Occupancy, we've talked about this. RevPAR, we talked about it already. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about this really quickly. I know you need to leave at noon at 1. Can you just please make sure that you've registered for HLEI once I post the announcement? Oh, okay, sounds good. Okay, so different tactics, and again, we're going to go through these in more detail in revenue management. This is just more of an introduction. Hurdle rate, oops. Hurdle rate is the rate we want to get over, right? So think about like the rate that we want to achieve for that day. We also call it our bar. I don't know why, but our industry loves acronyms. That stands for best available rate. Okay, so our hurdle rate is our best available rate. That's the rate we want to try to think about jumping over a hurdle. We want to clear that rate, okay? Minimum length of stay, these are tactics to help us with that revenue management. Minimum length of stay is what I explained a few moments ago with my friend from the Comfort Suites, right? She doesn't, what happens when we do a minimum length of stay is so that, let's say Russell comes in and he wants to stay on Friday night only, right? Or no, I take that back. Let's say this actually, let me give you this other perfect example. I used to run the rock and roll marathon here in San Antonio. Well, the half marathon. Did the full a couple of times, but not that many. Okay. So I did the half marathon. And I thought, it'd be awesome to stay at this Hilton Palacio del Rio. It's right across, it's literally right at the starting line. But I'm a local San Antonian. I don't need to stay Friday and Saturday night. I just want to stay Saturday night. So they say, well, I called and I said, well, you have to stay a 2-night minimum. You either have to stay on Friday, Saturday and check out on Sunday, or you can stay Saturday and Sunday and check out on Monday. Okay. The reason why they do that is because they don't want people like me, a local, to just come and take Saturday. Because if I fill up Saturday and Saturday is 100% sold out, but then an out of town guest wants to come in and they're coming in on Friday and they're sold out on Saturday, they can't take that reservation. And so that's what minimum length of stays will do. We know we've got a special event. We want to make sure that we can take every reservation possible. And so we'll close it. You have to stay either 2 nights, sometimes it's 3 nights. The summertime resorts may do a week-long minimum length of stay because they don't want to lose that potential guest that wants to stay for a whole week to somebody who only can stay for 2 nights. Okay. Now, as we get closer to the arrival date and we're not sold out, we might cancel that minimum length of stay because at that point, we want those people that can only stay for 2 nights to fill in the gaps to get us closer to 100% occupancy. Okay. Close to arrival these are the main 3 ones: hurdle, minimum length of stay, and close to arrival. Close to arrival means that we're not taking any more reservations. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're sold out. So we had a revenue manager at the Westin Hotel downtown. I think they have 3 to 350 rooms at their hotel on the Riverwalk. And post-COVID, they didn't have a full housekeeping staff to be able to turn all the rooms over. So they actually had to close to arrival at 70% because they didn't have enough staff members to clean those other 30%. So the trade-off was, do we run our staff ragged and sell out 100%, or do we close to arrival at 70% and then we know that our staff can take care of that percentage of rooms, right? Oftentimes too, close to arrival is if we have, we have like celebrities, political figures that are coming. We want to control the number of people that are in the property for security reasons. So close to arrival is something we can do in those areas. Okay. When we're talking about the last part of this is recruiting from an HR perspective. Okay. Okay. So we have 2 different types of recruiting for our staff members, our team members, or associates, as we often call them. Okay. One of them is internal recruiting. What does internal mean? From within, right? So you're promoting from within. We've heard that phrase, promote from within. That's internal recruiting. So some positives, doesn't cost us that much. I can print out a piece of paper, put on the bulletin board, and as right next to the time clock, and people can see what open positions are available. Okay. So it doesn't cost me that much to promote from within. I've already also trained somebody and they know our company culture. That's also really beneficial. What other benefits do you think come from internal recruitment? What's that? It's cheaper, it saves us money. What else? Yeah, they may already have that relationship with that person who's being promoted to a supervisor or whatnot. Good. Any other? Absolutely recognizing and honoring that loyalty of that employee. And we're just helping develop our staff, right? Now, any disadvantages you can think of? Maybe they're not qualified, or maybe they don't think they're qualified. Maybe everybody have a boss that's just like, how did you get my boss? How did you become the boss? I mean, yes. Okay, yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. And then that could cause some animosity. Like, you're getting paid what? And you do what? And I'm doing this, right? And so that definitely can cause some animosity. Okay. One of the other disadvantages is it doesn't really bring in welcoming new ideas, right? Somebody coming from outside. How many of you have ever been worked at a place where it's like, well, we've always done it this way? That's one of my least favorite phrases to hear. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to change just for the sake of changing. If something's working and we've always done it that way, let's keep doing that. But if we always do something the same way and it's not working, we got to change, right? And so that's where the external recruitment comes into play of bringing in some fresh ideas can help, okay? People who get skipped over, if multiple people are applying for the same supervisor position, again, that could cause some animosity for somebody who didn't get the position, right? There's pros and cons for both internal and external. So things that we can look at, cross-training. What does cross-training mean?
You get them familiar with different departments and sections of
Exactly. Who can give me an example of what kind of cross-training we might experience in a hotel? Oscar. Yeah, absolutely. So front desk to a food and beverage. Front desk learning housekeeping. Absolutely. Anybody else? Yep. Sorry.
like front desk, so like doing like cashier position at like a gift shop.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Exactly. So going from housekeeping to front desk, going the opposite direction. Yes. There you go. Perfect example, right? When they're cross-trained, when our team members are cross-trained, we can be more they're more flexible, right? And I don't know if you're like me, I like to do different things. I don't like to do the same thing every single day. And so I like that. When I was at Cheesecake Factory, I started as a server, and then I was cross-trained to be a server trainer, and then I was cross-trained to be in the bakery, and then a cashier. And so I could work 2 or 3 different shifts within 1 week and not get tired of it. Succession planning. What does that mean? Succession planning. Yes, Oscar. Exactly. Yeah. And actually, my entire doctoral study is going to be succession planning in higher education. So going from faculty to department chair to dean to VP to president. So for the next year and a half, 2 years, I'm going to be looking a lot at succession planning. And my idea is that how can we then, after I finish my study, how can we take that and now apply it to hospitality industry? So are there some correlations and some transferability there? Yes. Yeah. And oftentimes the person who gets promoted is the person who's been there the longest. They may not be the most qualified person, right? They may not have the most experience. And so I'm really looking forward to that. When y'all come see me in a year and a half, June of 2026, fingers crossed I'll be done. If you ever come see me in the future and my beard is shaved, you have to call me Dr. Ubinsky because that's going to be the signal. Well, as soon as I finish, the day they call me and say it's accepted, I'm going to shave it off. So this is a year and a half, and I have a year and a half more to go. Um, so with other ways we can post those job openings, like I said before, on a bulletin board. How are we doing? We're going to do, let's knock through these real quick. We talked about benefits already. Succession planning we talked about. We talked about, did we talk about advantages? One advantage we just brings in the new talent, new ideas. But it also avoids that situation where two people are applying for the same job and only one person gets it, right? So it avoids that altogether. But what's a disadvantage to that? What's that? Yeah, they could be bad. Yeah, that external person could be bad, but then now you have not just one person upset at you, now you have two people upset at you. Like, why did you bring in this new person when you had two of us, right? You can never win in HR. So yeah.
Um, It's basically about, they bring in a new person, right, for marketing and branding
Hmm.
strategy. And this person's young in her career. She had just graduated from college. So she has brand new, fresh, vibrant ideas. And then you have somebody else who's formally in charge of that. And they go, well, we kind of want to use her experience to kind of bring in fresh new ideas. And the older person goes, but I've been working here longer. I helped set up the company. I helped set up the visions and the marketing strategies. Why are we using her when she doesn't have really any experience except for college? And I feel like that can really cause problems too.
It
The
can.
old young person going, I have the experience, you have the degree though.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely. And so then how do you, as a leader of that organization, bring in the pros and cons for both of those? How can we get those two people to work together to say, how do you maybe have the younger person sit in with the more experienced person and have them give some background? Because there may be some things that we've tried and they didn't work, but that younger person doesn't have that background, so they don't understand that it's been tried before. So yeah, absolutely. How do you mesh those two and make it work together as a cohesive team? There's also a lot of times, so for example, Presidian Hospitality. So after AHA, we're going to Presidian Hospitality, which is the Doubletree Hotel and the Estancia del Norte. Okay, we're going to divide the class into two, and the hotels are a mile and a half from each other, so it's in the same area by the airport, free parking. Okay. um, but the Presidian Hospitality Group, they are a management company, so they'll go into a hotel, and oftentimes you find this when a hotel gets sold or is bought by a new management company, they're going to bring in their leadership, right? And so oftentimes there's a lot of turnover in those types of situations. And so then how do you manage that to work with the existing team? And then you also want to bring in the people who understand your culture as well. So there's a lot of that dynamic in hospitality. And that goes back to this right here of the orientation taking longer because they don't understand the company culture. They don't understand the way we do things. Yes, we're all cleaning rooms, and yes, we're all checking in and checking out guests, but we may do it in a very specific way. That is used, one thing, White Lodging, which is where Mark works at the Santo Hotel. One thing that's really big with White Lodging, which is a management company. I didn't realize this until just recently, but their associates are taught and trained to walk guests to where they're going. So I went to the Study, which is their little speakeasy type bar, and I wanted to go check out the rooftop. And the bartender literally walked us from the Study to the elevators. Rather than just saying the elevators are down the hall, they literally took the time to walk us from one place. That's part of the company culture. So if you're not used to that, I mean, even one little thing too, when I was at Cheesecake Factory, I remember one time somebody asked me where the restrooms were, and I said they're right over there. And my supervisor, the trainer, she was like, David, we never point. We use our whole hand. And I was like, what are you talking about? But because of that moment 22 years ago, I can't remember the last time I pointed at something, and this is a different gesture than that. And so that company culture, learning those things, sometimes they are learned. Sometimes that's innate and we know it, but sometimes it is learned. Sorry, Antonia, did you have a comment a few moments ago?
That's exactly
The military, okay.
exactly like that. So most enlisted have those years of experience, whereas you bring that to refresh. out of college. So, we look at it as, we advise,
Okay,
or as a advise those managers. We, so it's not necessarily like a, I don't want to call it a problem, but
yeah,
it's a lot. We call ourselves advisors over, like, we work with.
gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
Teachers work together.
yeah, absolutely. I took a training recently, and it was about how to critique other people's online courses, um, and like other faculty. And I was like, you should do this. And they're like, David, no, you should replace you should with you might consider. You might consider doing this. It's rather than me telling you, you should do this, you need to do this, you might consider doing this, which I'm really telling you, you need to do this. But you might consider doing this. It's a little bit more collegial or more like a polite way of saying you really should do this. So yeah, it's all in kind of how you phrase things. So we talked about external recruiting, advertising using things like Indeed, Monster, Facebook, okay, all in LinkedIn, okay, networking. Okay, I've got 3 different jobs just because of networking. I didn't even have to apply to one of them. My interview was the 6 months before they saw me working in the industry, and attending different AHA events. And so when I told them I was kind of frustrated with my current job, they were like, "Well, just come work with us. We already know your work ethic. We already know that you have those connections in San Antonio, so just come work for us." So sometimes your interview is not an interview. Sit down. Your interview is how you behaved in the past and how what people observed for you. Okay. Um, Referral programs are really effective. Okay. Because people are not going to recommend people that are not going to do a good job. Most time with employee referral programs, they have to stay after a certain period of time. So like after 90 days, if they've met their 90 days and they're still there, then maybe you get a $500 bonus, right? For each person you bring in. Well, am I going to bring in somebody who's only going to last a month? No. Okay. So oftentimes we have those employee referral programs allows us to get really good quality talent in that way. Okay. In the HR world, we do need to work with people that have disabilities. We have to make reasonable accommodations per the American with Disabilities Act. Okay. But those are reasonable accommodations. Some things, if somebody cannot make a bed, then they can't be a housekeeper. Okay. Maybe they can be a house person. So maybe they're not a room attendant, but we can make those reasonable accommodations for them, in order to, if somebody is a night auditor and they can't stand for 8 hours, well, we might put a chair behind the front desk or might allow them to go to the back office to sit down when there's no guests, right? And that night audit position allows us to do that. But we also want to make sure that we're putting forth that best face, especially at the front desk. They're the face of the organization, often the first time somebody sees and interacts with somebody. Okay. Oh, so these are some different things. I'm going to point out a couple of them. These are some errors that happen during interviewing from the person who is actually doing the who is the interviewer. Sorry, the person who's actually asking the questions. Okay. Similarity effect is, oh, you went to University of Houston. I went to University of Houston. I went to University of Houston. You went to St. Philip's College. I'm going to choose the University of Houston person, right? That's the similarity effect. We want to try to avoid that. We want to hire the best candidate, not necessarily the people who we have the most in common with. Okay. First impressions. I think I've told y'all this story about the general manager who had a really bad first impression from a lady. Oh no, it was my professionalism class. Just kidding. That was last week. So I had a general manager who once told me, he shared a story in a speech where he had a young lady. She came, she was not dressed professionally. She seemed rushed, and his first impression was not good. And he sat down with her and he was like, I don't think this is your best first impression. Is there anything going on? And she explained to him all these things, that my tire went flat, I had this, but I'm still here at the interview. And he says, well, why don't we reschedule? Why don't you go home, freshen up, take some time, collect yourself, change, and come back this afternoon? And he hired her and she worked with him for many years. So I know sometimes it's hard for us for that first impression to make those changes. And it's really hard to make those changes once you've had that negative first impression, but it is possible. The halo effect is this person can do no wrong, right? This person is amazing. They're an angel. They can do no wrong. Devil's horn is the opposite. This person can do no right. Okay. I cannot stand this person. No matter what they do, they can do no right. And so we want to avoid those types of things in the interview process. Okay. How are we doing on time? Oh, we have 10 minutes. Okay. Things we want to avoid in interviews is close-ended questions. Questions that you can answer with yes or no. What's a disadvantage of using a close-ended question? I agree. Yeah. Leah, do you like cake?
I do.
Okay, you do. Awesome. Boom, we're done. Move on to the next question. Leah, what's your favorite kind of cake?
Vanilla cake.
Okay, we get more explanation when we have open-ended questions. We can learn more about that person than if we just ask them a yes or no question. Can you check a guest in? Yeah, I can. Tell me about your guest check-in process. Okay, and so then you go through the whole process and you learn about what that person does. Okay, so those open-ended questions are much more effective. Okay, orientation within the hotel. Okay, we want to give a lot of information. It's not what it's, we often call it onboarding, like bringing somebody on board to our team, but it goes beyond that. Part of your orientation should be a tour of the whole hotel. When Dr. Lawson, when we have new employees every semester, Dr. Lawson gives us an entire tour of the entire campus. We go into every building, into every department, right? And I remember when I was a new employee 9 years ago, I walked into the Center for Health Professions. They have a legit operating room. And I was like, man, my program of hotel management looks like this big right now, because they have a whole operating room. They have a whole x-ray lab. They have a whole stenography, right? They have a mannequin that can give birth 18 times a day. Open up the belly, put the baby in, close it, program it. I mean, it's incredible. And then before I left that building, I stopped and I was like, wait a minute. No, these nurses and doctors need hotels to have conferences. They need hotels to stay in when they're traveling. So we all have a place, right? So the orientation should include all of that. The orientation should show you every department and how they work. So that way, when front desk they're waiting on housekeeping, they understand what it takes to get those rooms to flip in a quick time frame, right? And so that onboarding is really important. And then we'll end with this, okay? This is more again on the HR side, but we want to prepare to train. We want to figure out what are the things we need to learn? What are the things we need to teach? And so to do that, we're going to work with the heads of our department. Hey, executive housekeeper, what do you need me to teach your housekeepers, your room attendants, your housemen, your laundry, your supervisors? How do I train them? Okay. And then we present the training, we practice the skills, and then we follow up. So the 4 steps to training somebody: first, we need to prepare for it. How many times have you ever had, and I'm going to raise my hand right now because I've been this teacher. How many of you ever had a teacher that walks into a room and you think, did this person just look at this material like 20 minutes ago? Right? If you don't prepare, then it's hard for you to be able to teach effectively. Okay. As we present the training, are we going to present it hands-on? Is we presenting it in a classroom? You know, when I worked at TG or Cheesecake Factory, we had our final exam as a server was a packet with 200 blank lines numbered 1 through 200. And our test was a slideshow of every menu item. And we had to write the full menu item name, not the Micros computer name, the full menu item name for 200 items, including 45 cheesecakes by sight, right? But before that, we had classroom. We got to taste the food. We got to see it on a buffet, right? So we did all that different training. And the follow-up is the most important. So training happens first. After follow-up, we have what's called coaching. Okay, so coaching happens after the training. Coaching might be more one-on-one. Hey, David, I noticed that you don't make your bed so well. So let's work on just that aspect. Your bathrooms are perfect. There's no hair in your bathrooms. Everything is clean, but your beds, we need some work on. So let's coach you on how we can make that more efficient, okay? And that's where we're gonna end with, because it's just, the next 4 slides is just basically what I just talked about in bullet statements, okay? So before you leave, if you